All right, everybody, welcome to IFS in Black. This is our very first panel. So grateful for all of you to be here and be able to join us wherever you're on Facebook, or if you're live with us in Zoom. We have an excellent group of people. Bar none, you can't top this panel, not even if you tried. And so just so grateful to be able to share this space with these people who've been able to come to talk with us about the topic, what is IFS? And so IFS in Black is the overarching mission is mainly to bring this parts work to Black communities in various ways. You've probably been able to see some of the demos that we've posted recently, and that we have another one coming this week. And so, with that being said, we're gonna kick it off. I want to start by introducing everyone else, just to put the limelight off of me. And so I'm going to start to my left. The first person with us is the co-host for this evening, Dominique Lamb. Would you mind telling us a little about yourself?
My name is Dominique Lamb. I took IFS level 1 and Philip was my PA. And so we had several conversations about doing more things with IFS in the Black community. And this is one of the ideas that came from those conversations. So I'm really excited that it's happening now, because I feel like we've been planning this for a while. But yeah, that's a little bit about me.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Next we have Nydia.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nydia Guity, and by profession, I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I am licensed in New York, my home state. Shout out to the Bronx. I am based in Georgia, which is also where I'm licensed, as well as DC and California. I took my level 1 training, my level 1 IFS training in February of 2018. And I've PA'd a level 1 IFS training with Black Therapist Rock as well.
Thank you, Nydia. Nydia was one of my PAs. And so y'all definitely in for a treat with her. And now we have our newly appointed AT. Going to pass it to Requina. Just wanted to shout you out and give you a chance. Please introduce yourself.
Thanks for that, Philip and Dominique. My name is Requina Barnes. I am a social worker by trade. I am also a newly assistant IFS trainer. I took my level 1 in 2014, level 2, 2018. And I have been blessed to work with each individual on this panel in some capacity, whether it's at being their PA or in other ways. And so it's great to be here. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then last but definitely not least, we got Brother Victor. Victor, will you please introduce yourself? We similar to meeting with Dominique and last BTR, that's when I met Vic. So please tell us about yourself, buddy.
Yeah. So my name is Victor Cabral, and I'm a licensed social worker and certified trauma professional. I completed my IFS level 1 training in this year's cohort level 1 with Black Therapist Rock. I'm licensed in Pennsylvania and also recently licensed in Connecticut. And outside of my work as a therapist, my full-time job is as the Director of Policy and Regulatory Affairs for Fluence, which is a company that trains clinicians in psychedelic assisted therapy and psychedelic integration and harm reduction. So super glad to be here and reconnect with my family. So let's get into it.
Definitely. And then I'll tell you a little bit about myself. Dr. Grisby, can we ask you to, how you doing? Would you mind going off camera? Thank you, sir. And a little bit about me, I'm Philip Butler, level 1 trained, been working with the model since 2013, the founder of the Seekr project. It's distinctly Black conversational AI. If you ever get a chance, go to theseekrproject.com. The app will be out in stores soon. But let's kick off these questions though. Like, let's start there. The first question we want to ask this evening is a very simple question, but I think it's going to take a different shape with each different person who answers it. And so the first question we're going to lead off is, what does IFS mean to you? And it's a 2-part question. The second part is, how has it impacted your life? Hey, feel free to jump in. I don't want to call nobody, and so whoever wants to lead.
So what does IFS mean to me? I think of harmony, harmonizing my emotions and getting to a space where like I'm honoring both and as opposed to either or. And it has dramatically changed my life. I would say since 2018, I've learned to be present with discomfort in a way that feels safely uncomfortable. Oftentimes we're taught like, you know, well, don't have an attitude, don't feel that way. And it's like, no, you feel that way for a reason. Lean into it, pay attention to how often these feelings are coming up. And since then, I've been doing a lot of just mindfulness, and I feel more ease because I'm not trying to push away feelings that are trying to show me something.
Nah, thank you for that. You're hitting the nail on the head. Like it speaks to that multiplicity of mind, right? That's kind of one of the foundational elements of this. Is like I can feel more than one thing at once. Like that's a real thing, family. So like I appreciate that. Does anybody else? Requina?
I'll jump in. Yeah. So for me, IFS, I feel like it's a way to get to know yourself in a more deeper way outside of this exterior presentation we have. It really gets us to go in and really figure out who we are on a deeper level. And so even the wording of it, internal family systems, really the thought of there is a deeper self within. And so when I think of IFS and when I teach IFS, that's usually the lens I'm coming from, but that's also how I feel it. I don't just feel it like logically, intellectually. I feel the work internally. And the way it's impacted me, so I'm very transparent about this. I became a client of an IFS therapist in 2011. And that's how I was introduced to it. And because it was such an effective model as far as changing behaviors, my life, getting me to see things that have happened and how to view things on a different level, that's the impact. And ever since I got a taste of IFS 2011, I was really interested in thinking, how do I learn this for my own system and for the individuals that I work with, because it was such a model that, again, wasn't like a logical apply A to B. It's like, no, who are you? So the level of self-awareness for IFS is what kind of stands out for me.
Yeah, no, 100%. There's the age-old question, like, who are you, right? And realizing that there's so much more under the surface. Like, I love this idea that you're highlighting, right, about getting to know yourself in a deeper way, and this kind of the system piece, right? Because again, one of those foundational things, we're gonna get to it in a little bit, right? But like I think even for myself, like I see it like I see myself as like a constellation, right? Like this like the stars, right? And it's on all these stars, all these planets, right? All of the, you know, the wind, all the things that happen out there in quote unquote space, right? They're happening inside of me. And so it allows for these shifting and dynamic relationships and things that don't stay in the same place, but are also like another part of myself. So I love it. I love it. Victor, is anything you want to add? Like, what does it mean to you, man? What is IFS, man?
Yeah, I think it's similar to Requina. Leading up to my first training, I had heard so many good things about IFS, and then I got an opportunity to work with an IFS therapist in a group setting and also on an individual basis. And I think for me, what first struck me about it was, one, I was like one session in with this therapist, and right away we were like deep into whatever it is that we were talking about at the time, and that really made me a believer, because it was so deep and it was so quickly. But also I think what IFS means to me, or what it is to me, is another tool. And I feel like I'm a systems thinker. I've worked in government at a high level. I'm a social worker. And so my mind operates from a systemic perspective, looking externally. But I think what this model did for me was it really helped me turn that perspective inward. And I think most importantly, what it is for me is a tool to do my shadow work in a way that's compassionate and graceful, right, to myself. So that's what it's done for me.
Nah, I love it, though. Can you mind saying more about this about the shadow work, right? And the compassion that maybe that you've had to muster, or somebody's had to exhibit for you, or something along those lines?
Yeah, I think when it comes, I've done a lot of work with plant medicine and healing, and And I think when I ran into to IFS and I started doing the work with this, I realized that there was a way that I could get deep and even deeper actually, without necessarily having to sit with a medicine or that I could use IFS to integrate what was coming up for me during my plant medicine ceremonies. And so when I talk about shadow work, I mean, it's so complex. It's everything from like my intersectionality as a Black male and a Black Latino, and working through that, being able to own the ways in which I show up in the world that perpetuate oppression, or you know, taking responsibility and accountability as a human being and as a man for the way that I show up, and doing so in a compassionate way, and understanding why I react or act in certain ways or behave in certain ways that aren't healthy at times. And doing that from a compassionate point of view helps me to then have a conversation with the part that might be showing up in the world in a way that is not who I want to be, right? And bringing it back into balance, understanding what that part needs from me, from myself, and then being able to use that to mend relationships or to move differently in the world, whether it's professionally, personally. I think that's how it's helped me with shadow work.
That's dope, bro. I think this is you opening this up allows us to kind of move into this definition space, right? It kind of help us to unpack some of this model. Dominique, do you mind starting us off? Which term do you think it would be good for us to explore first?
Yeah, I actually was adding to the list. We have come up with some terms that we thought might be useful for people who are maybe new to IFS and new to some of the jargon. So while people were talking, I was adding some more. And one, I guess we've already defined IFS as internal family systems. So you've already heard that definition. One that came up while our panelists were talking that I wrote down was system. We did talk about the self. And I think, you know, if anybody would want to take a shot at defining that, I think self and system can kind of go together. No takers.
I'll risk the take. I'll jump in there. I think for me, so I'm gonna separate it and then combine it. So for me, self energy, and when we talk about self, we're talking about your authentic, right? Like when you feel your most grounded, right? What does that feel like? Who do you feel like? And are you able to stay there? You know, being grounded in self. So usually, you know, self energy is such a definition that's hard to really define because it's based off of one's own experience. But when I hear self energy, the words that come to me are grounded, authentic, in the moment, those kind of things. So I would say that's self. And then when we have systems is we have the external systems, but we also have our internal system. And how does self kind of integrate into those, right? Whether it's our own system and how self energy and self shows up, and how self energy is able to show up in our external systems. And so when I said separate it and then combine it, because I think there's a way to do both. What has worked for my own system is the more that I got to know myself, right? My own internal system and access my own self energy, that allows me to show up not only from my own internal system, but in external systems or external dynamics that arise in my life. And so to separate it, I would say they work separately and they work in conjunction with each other. So that's going to be my piece on that.
I thought that was perfect. That was a perfect way to define it. And you talked a lot about external systems, and that made me think that might be a good segue to just defining more about like external constraints and some of the ways that that our parts have to navigate what's happening outside of our systems. So does anybody want to define external constraints? Please.
To go first. Well, the way that I would define external constraints are things that are outside of your control. So like an example that I think about is like capitalism. Who controls that? It's a system that we are a part of and we contribute to in some way, but a lot of it you really can't control, because if a necessity is based on your paycheck, is like, this is something that I'm having to be a part of and I'm having to do. Whether or not yourself is in alignment, this is still something that you're doing. So learning how to operate in systems that you don't control in the healthiest way is the way that I would describe an external constraint.
Yeah, I think that's dope.
Yeah.
Did you have something else to add to self and systems before we ask the next definition?
The self part I did. I was thinking, because when Vic said, shadow work, I was thinking about like connecting with just your intuition and your inner knowing. You don't need confirmation from anyone but you. And when you just do. And I think that in order for you to tap into that part of yourself, there is a level of shadow work that has to happen so that you learn to lean on you other than other systems.
Yeah.
Or outside systems. It's like, I don't need validation from this because I know, and that's enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's cold.
Okay.
That's cold. That's cold. Hey,
I think we have to talk about parts, Philip. We have been using that the most. That is like critical to IFS.
Fair enough. Anybody want to jump out there and talk about parts?
Yeah, can I rewind for a second to external constraints? Just to add what Nydia had added, I'd like to also think about the concept of, as people of color, as Black and brown bodies, when we talk about external constraints, really thinking about how external circumstances, like Nydia was referring to, impact us, and how there's certain parts that we have, which we'll go in more detail about, how those parts actually protect us based off of the isms, right? If there's an ism that we have to protect ourselves from, that's out of sometimes safety. And so those external constraints are really something to consider when we talk about doing IFS and also how we show up in certain situations. I'll also link it back to what I was saying earlier as far as self-energy and showing up in certain places. There are certain external environments where we have to protect ourselves, period. Right? And so that those external constraints are part of our reality as Black and brown people. So I also just wanted to add that piece as far as external constraints and how they show up in our systems, and also how they show up in the parts that we get to identify as far as protecting us, as far as state safety, as far as these are experiences that I've had. So I need these parts to show up like this in this situation.
I just want to say that y'all are snapping right now. Like I mean, for me personally, like in my own, like there's a part of me that I've been wrestling with lately is about like seeking permission versus like actually like moving off of that intuition, like you were talking about, Nydia, and even kind of going further back when you were saying, Requina, about like who do you sound like in self? It almost makes you think about like ancestral work and even legacy stuff, like who, not only like who does this particular part sound like? Maybe having a part sound like somebody close to you or maybe a distant relative, but who do you sound like when you're in self? Like who are you in connection with when you step into self that is you, but is also like connected to somebody further down the line as an embodiment of again more this kind of multiplicity of potential use at any given moment.
I like to add to that, because when you talk about, where we come from in our lineage, like I sit up thinking of my ancestors, and it's like, say it with your chest, show up and be bold always, because who you come from is strength, always. So it's like, when I think of that, it's like, oh yeah, I have to show up and be bold with it, because the people before me couldn't speak up in this way. So it's not just my voice, it's theirs.
I love that.
Thank you.
I love that. I think that's a good place to move on to the next question, actually.
Okay, what you got?
In particular, because Nydia was mentioning our ancestors, and we're talking, Requina was mentioning our Black and brown bodies. we're wondering, since you all are clinicians and you work with different clients, how do you introduce IFS to your Black clients? And what's that experience like, you know, introducing this model, talking about parts, talking about, you know, isms? How has that been?
I'll go. I don't want to hog the mic, so I'll make this quick. I will say that introducing IFS has been easier than I anticipated. I think that when I got comfortable practicing IFS, it became a lot easier to explain it, because sometimes as clinicians, we get so stuck on jargon and like doing it the right way, whatever that even means, and like following the system of how we're taught to do the modality and training sessions. But in real life, that's not how it plays out. I find that when I'm introducing IFS to clients, you know, we stay we invest a lot of time in just witnessing and being present with how we experience or how a client experiences a certain emotion in and around their bodies. When we talk about the isms in which we exist in, it's actually even the first time where people even have the opportunity to say out loud what they feel. The first time. And we're talking about, you know, people could be in their 30s, their 40s, their 50s. I've met with clients even as seasoned in their 80s. And it's the first time that you're able to actively or openly express a feeling of discomfort that you're having. So I've learned that, you know, be familiar with the model and the way that it flows, but also be present with what's in front of you, because the client will lead you in the direction that you need to go. That to me has been eye-opening in just explaining it, because for me, what it's taught me is to slow down. Slow down. You know the model, yes, you will get to the parts that you need to get to in due time, but slow down and let the client lead as they feel comfortable.
Yeah.
I can respond to that as well. When I was first learning the model, the way that I used to describe it is more logical. I used to really kind of do a layout of what the model is and how it's going to work and be very logical about it. But the more comfortable I got with it and the more I continue to do my own work, I'm able now, when I introduce it, I'm able to introduce it not so much logical, but more from a, you know, we use the word curious a lot of the time in IFS, but this model is really going to allow you to just get curious about some, you know, maybe patterns you have, certain behaviors, certain emotions you have. And I also like to talk about feeling safe enough, because I think doing IFS work for me, there has to be safety in the relationship and trust in the relationship because it's a model that does call on you to be a little vulnerable, or sometimes a lot vulnerable, depending on what you're talking about. So I think that piece is also important in the therapeutic relationship, as you know, I've practiced with clients, or even I've been on the opposite end being a client, you know, but I think I'm able to describe it in a way that's kind of talks about the flow of it, and how we're going to get curious about just different things that are going on, particularly if there's a certain behavior that's coming up. I'll say, you know, do you want to try IFS? Let's kind of get curious about kind of what's happening in there. So it's dropping down. So I'll call it like a drop down kind of explanation versus a logical in your brain kind of like, you know, textbook.
Mm-hmm.
I love that, and what y'all are bringing up, at least for me, is this kind of this idea of like even kind of getting into the body, like Nydia, when you're saying like giving people even opportunity to maybe speak, and then kind of like this dropping down. And Big, I ain't want to cut you out. Nah, we coming back to you. Like you're not getting away, fam. Would you be able to say more? And even Vic, if you want to jump in here and then lead off to what you about to say, like what is it like? What does it mean when we start asking our clients and folks to be engaging with, like to get connected with their bodies? I know that doesn't always, not everybody receives that the same way.
Right.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about, I think that's, in my experience, it's been a little easier with working with young children or teenagers and asking them to really feel out where the anxiety sits at, where the anger is sitting at. And at first it can be a little bit awkward, right? They're like, I don't know what you're talking about. And so I think sometimes some disclosure, some like walking them through of like, well, when you know, I'll use funny examples of like, when you know you're about to get in trouble with your mom, like where do you feel that in your body? Like we all know that's in your gut, right? Like you scared, you get the bubble guts, as they say, right? And that helps kind of introduce kids and young adults or young uh, adolescents to how to because they know where those feelings are sometimes, but they just haven't really been intentional about paying attention to them. And I think what I'll add is, for me, I find that particularly when I'm working with Black and brown men, um, there's already kind of a distrust or you know, some barriers there that I have to work through. And so for me, I like what Nydia and what Requina were saying about not necessarily always trying to go step by step with the model, or even like sitting down and explaining the model to people. Like some people are just coming, like especially when I'm working with men, a lot of them are like coming to therapy for the first time. So you start explaining these models and they check out, right? They're not really engaging with that. So what I like to do is just um kind of help, you know, I use the model in helping men create space between, I think from my perspective, that a lot of men are taught to be blended with parts, right? So we're taught to be that we are the anger that we feel, that we distance ourselves from other emotions because they portray weakness, right? So with sadness, anxiety, etc. Um, so when you start leaning into those things and creating that space and letting men see that they have you know, bringing them back into self, kind of giving them space to be able to observe those feelings, um then that opens up room. I think you have to get a little bit of space there before you jump into what are you feeling in your body, or asking questions about the part, or introducing the model. Like how do you allow the men that I'm working with, I think about how do I allow them to kind of ease into this, to first get over their general anxiety of just being in the room with me and talking about this stuff, and then easing them into these deeper conversations. And I find that over time with rapport, it's a lot easier to move them to a space where or to a place where they have the space between them and the parts, and then we can have those conversations and about how they're polarized, and you know, how to get more balance and more peace, and more and lead more from the core self.
I love that, Vic. And what that made me think of is how this model is applied differently in our community. Like just you needing to take that extra time with them so that they can feel comfortable, like get past whatever anxiety about being in therapy to begin with. Then, okay, now we're going to do IFS work. Now, you know, we're going to talk about parts and like all the steps that have to be taken, all the consideration that has to be taken because you're working with brown and Black men. And so I'm curious for all of our panelists, what your experiences have been in particular with your Black clients. Like what have you had to maybe adjust in your approach for, you know, your Black clients?
Oh,
Go ahead, Requina.
okay. I'll jump in. I think for me, it goes back to the relationship and really going slow. So when I really think about us as Black and brown people, you know, our bodies are still going through stuff, right? So this is legacy stuff. And so for me to ask the client to open up internally, that's a big ask, right? And so the relationship of the trust and the safety is so critical for me. When I do IFS with my Black men and Black women clients, I'm usually pacing the process. I think Nydia brought up a point around witnessing earlier. It is a lot of witnessing and just standing next to them, standing, you know, with them, whatever that looks like, versus me trying to implement a model, a therapeutic model onto them. It's really a process where the client and the person that I'm working with is really going to be able to navigate their own system and me not push them into a certain direction. And so for me, I think it's pacing, allowing us to process, and allowing the work to unfold that way. I usually check with clients, do you want to do another piece of IFS on that part, or has something else come up for you? It's a real slow process. That's the way that I choose to implement it.
That makes a lot of sense. Nydia, did you want to add anything?
I was gonna say, Philip, repeat the question. I'm so into what Requina said. I was like, I forgot what I was gonna say. Repeat the question.
How do you, if you adjust, how do you adjust your approach of the model with your Black clients? Or what have you seen that made it necessary for you to like do things differently? Like, what did that look like for your Black clients?
So to Requina's point, definitely slowing down. And I use examples that have nothing to do with therapy to kind of just break the ice in the space, because it can feel like too much, especially in the power dynamic of like, I'm seeing a therapist. I don't really want to talk to you. I have, some reservations about even sharing much about myself with you. So I'll say something to the effect of like, in introducing the model, the IFS is a way to harmonize our emotions, where we're honoring both and comfortable and uncomfortable emotions. So like on the comfortable side, we have feelings like happiness, joy, pleasure, relief, relaxation. This is comfortable. On the uncomfortable side, we have feelings like anxiety, depression, irritability, frustration. On the far, far end of that, I would even add suicidal thoughts. But notice how I said comfortable and uncomfortable, not good or bad, not healthy or unhealthy, just comfortable and uncomfortable, because physically, this is how we experience these emotions in and around our bodies. And then I'll add something to the mix of like, in honoring the spectrum of emotions, we can even add nonverbal language to this. Has there ever been a time where, your day is going great and then out of nowhere you're in a funk and can't explain why? That matters. Honoring the spectrum of emotions, comfortable and uncomfortable. We don't need verbal language or even a reason to explain why we feel the way that we do. To honor is not to accept and just say, well, I'm okay with being upset. It's like, no, to honor is to see it for what it is. I'm upset, period. And with that, what information, what is this uncomfortable emotion showing me that I need to know? And this is where the witnessing comes in. It's like, oh yeah, I do feel that way sometimes. By the way, the other day, and then it just keeps going. So like giving examples that have nothing to do with therapy, I find that it helps people connect more. And this is where that rapport is established, because then it doesn't feel so formal anymore or as much.
Yeah, I could definitely see how that would be helpful. I'm thinking about my own like family and friends, and if they were in therapy, and how that doesn't feel like you're in therapy. So that would make it a lot easier for them to, connect and feel open, and just like, that's when you feel like you got tricked into therapy. It's like, wait, hold on, did we just, was that part of the model? Was that part of therapy?
I give examples galore, and I'll give you another one. So let's pretend this is a soda bottle. It's not, with what you came to session with. All right. Feelings of sadness. All right. You lost your job during the pandemic. Let's give an extra shake to the pandemic, because this is a lot. And then an extra shake for the things we didn't get to talk about yet. If this were a soda bottle and I suddenly took the cap off, what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah.
Granted, that is a rhetorical question, but it is the embodiment of how our feelings show up when we're not in harmony. For some people that could be, I have not cleaned my house in months and all I want to do is sleep, or, I don't eat consistently, or I can't sleep at all. Whatever the manifestation is, that is what the explosion looks like for you. So from an IFS lens, we don't control life. Life is gonna life. So the shaking still continues. But as we're leaning into the discomfort and opening this cap, this pressure has to go somewhere. This is information. Let's be present with this so that we can make an informed decision that feels in alignment. people really relax when you present it in that way, because it's not forced. It is at their pace and everything in due time.
Yeah. And I can imagine you feel less judged,
Oh,
like
yeah.
from the outside, but also you feel less judgmental of your own emotions. I feel like, especially in our community, it's familiar
Yeah.
to judge ourselves for the way that we feel, to, distract ourselves from things that are uncomfortable. So that makes a lot of sense to me. That's resonating. Philip, did you want to say anything?
I'm just soaking this in. I'm acting like I'm in the audience right now. Like I'm forgive me. for just trying to, I'm like, maybe I need to call y'all up and pay for some of y'all time and give me my own session right about now. But nah, I'm loving the flow of it right now. I think we may have time for like maybe 1 or 2 more questions before we open it up to the audience.
Okay, let's squeeze in one more, and then I have more, but then we can do a Q&A, and I might jump in and ask some more then. I think kind of along the lines of what we were talking about, if you all could speak on when you're with clients, and because this is IFS and Black, specifically your Black and brown clients, what would you say has been the biggest misconception? Actually, not just for your clients, but even for you experiencing IFS. Because Philip and I were talking about how you experienced it first, and then, you practice the model with your clients. So what would you say has been sort of your biggest misconception in either realm?
I can go first for myself. The first time I engaged with the model, I'm gonna be honest, I was like, this is BS. Like, I'm not with it. And then like 10 minutes later, I was wailing, right, and crying. But I think sometimes personally, I would say, like, in the beginning, that I would project that onto my clients, that they would maybe feel the same way about the model when I presented it. So and yeah, that's a part to deal with, right? But I think people, it's just about how you present it. And I like, the way that Requina and Nydia were talking about pacing and taking it slow and honoring people's autonomy and how they want to move, right? I think I was watching Resma today, and he talks about the intersectionality in white body supremacy of being in a rush and stuck at the same time. And so I, especially with Black and brown men, I think I feel that and I empathize with that, right? With that feeling of feeling rushed all the time, but also feeling and then feeling stuck in that. And I think part of just honoring that, right? And making sure that we allow that space, and that that we're not perpetuating the things that we've internalized from these other external systems.
Anyone else want to add? Okay, yeah, go ahead.
No, repeat the question.
Oh,
I have thought, but I'm an audience. I'm in the audience listening to Vic, like, yeah, I agree. And I forgot
good.
to go again.
I'm glad you're getting to be present. So the question is just about misconceptions with IFS. Like, if you had any as you were experiencing it for yourself, or if you've noticed any in practicing with clients.
So I was introduced to IFS at the first Black Therapist Rock Conference in 2017. And I saw a demo with Nancy and Dr. Percy Ballard, and he was the client. He is the Black psychiatrist. And I was watching it, and like, although I was pulled into it, it had nothing to do with me, but I'm like, this shit might work. But I was looking at the way it was playing out, and it's like, I'm not a white woman. So I don't know how in a space with 2 brown bodies, I could flow in that way where someone will feel safe enough to share anything with me using this model. So like, that was a big misconception for me until I was trained in it, because I don't think I feel like one of the things IFS has taught me, which makes it so different from other models, is that I feel like I'm connecting more with souls rather than like what I'm visually looking at. And I was so stuck on Nancy's white and Percy's black. How can this work out in session versus like Nancy's a human and so is Percy. I feel like the isms kind of, they're there and we honor them for what they are, but it's like, that's not the focal point anymore. That's not what leads. It's like, we see it there and let's focus on what brings us closest together as a people.
Yeah, but I think what you just said bears repeating, because I think in our community, the isms are our constant focus. We are constantly dealing with the isms. Like that is something we have to constantly think about, and we don't always get to step back and just see human to human. Kind of like what Requina was saying earlier, like dealing with some of the isms, we have to protect ourselves. And so some of our parts are always in protection mode, or always thinking about, well, maybe that works for them, but not for me, because we have to be very aware of our differences, I feel like, to feel safe, So I just wanted to highlight that again, because I think that that's a really good point.
Does anyone else want to add before we move into the Q&A and engage some of the folks that are joining us today? So at this point, we're going to open it up to the audience. I think we have about 3 questions in the queue already. And so please, if you have any questions, Brian, I guess we got to check out Brian's real quick. But
add them here. You want to start with Matthews, Natasha?
Yes.
What psychoeducation or ways do you help people who have a difficult time feeling anything? I guess anyone who might want to answer
that. I don't know about psychoeducational, but I think that not feeling anything is a part, right? And so like focusing on like what that experience is like, and how they embody that, how that shows up somatically, and digging into that slowly usually I think opens up the opportunity to then start to explore what's behind that, what that's numbing, right? So what's behind that part? What is it protecting? And so if you get into that conversation with the client, and sometimes it takes a long time to get somebody to like open that door up, but I think treating that as a part and respecting it and honoring that it might not want to talk to you for a while, and there's a relationship that needs to be built, I think is helpful.
And I want to piggyback on that. Thank you for answering that. Are you building a relationship with the part if you already have a relationship with the client?
Yeah, so I mean, it really, sometimes you ask the client to communicate with the part. Sometimes there's direct access, and I think that some of the more seasoned trainers could probably, or clinicians could answer that. But I think for me, it's building a relationship with the clients, right, for them to be able to then talk to that part. And then eventually, if there's room and if there's trust there, then you might be able to talk to the part directly, and that takes work with the client, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that question. Yes. So the next question was from Kalima. It was like, how do we handle when someone isn't a good fit for the model? And the second part of the question was, is that really a thing?
I can answer that. I don't think it is a thing. I think that IFS can work with any client. And if it feels like it's not working, you're probably going too fast. There has to be a slowdown somewhere. There was a breakdown in communication somewhere along the line, because when a protector comes up, it's doing exactly what it's supposed to do, protect the client. They don't know you. You over here asking all these questions about intimate things. that they don't even know how to answer for themselves. Rightfully so, there will be a block. So I think that when difficulty comes about, pause, take inventory, ask questions about where you are in the present moment to see if it can be remedied, because part of IFS is also working with your parts. This is not about either or, it's both and. Two things that are opposing could be true at the same time, and we can honor both. So I think that, and I actually like when this happens, because what it shows and it models for clients is that we can have a hiccup or a slip up and fix it, because that's life. It's not, things are not always going to play out in linear order and work out well. So when we have a slip up or when we have to take a detour, how do we get back into alignment? So even using that as a learning opportunity for them, I find it to be helpful as well.
Thank you, Nydia. Anybody else want to answer that question before we move on to the next one?
I can add to what Nydia just said. I think, you know, as we get to know the model, even if it means spending a lot of sessions on just the first F, which is fine, that's doing the model, right? And so I think it's part of it is what's the relationship like, what Vic just talks about, and also what Nydia just talked about, what is the pace and what is the process? And if the client feels like they're not ready for that, it's a protector, like Vic and Nydia said. That means the system's protecting itself from, you know, a stranger, right? Stranger alert. And it's okay to be in that process. The goal of IFS is not to, what Vic said earlier, not to rush through, quoting Resma McKinnon, not rushing through the process. That's not healing, to rush through the process, right? The healing work is based on the individual or the client's system and where they're at in that moment. And what does that look like? And even as a therapist, can you hold that space? So I think it's being creative with the model versus saying, you know, or a client saying, this is not for me. Get curious about that.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Requina. I think Philip mentioned earlier in the intro that we've been doing demos to promote Seekr and just really to promote Black people doing parts work and the different ways that that might look. And I think that could also be helpful. Requina, you just made me think of that because I've participated in the demos and watched the demos, and I'm always amazed and surprised at like how different the model can look between two different people. And it's still the model, but it looks totally different than it would look if I were a part of the demo, or, you know, so I think that kind of lends itself to what you were just saying. So check them out, shameless plug. Check out these demos. Let us know if you want to be in a demo.
Oh, yeah.
And then we have another question.
I mean, Natasha just left, and her second question is up.
Oh, I still see her.
I don't see her on my screen. No,
I'm here.
she left the.
Okay.
Do you want to pose it since you want since you up here?
Yeah. Look, I got to go back and look at it now. Because I was getting these questions in. Let's see. So I may have answered my own question. So when clients they want to do parts work, but they're distracted, and I'm not judging the distraction. Does everything become a part? So the distraction, if we're talking about the parts and then they veer off and they want to talk about the narrative process. And so how do you kind of, if you understand my question, we're right in the middle of parts and then they start talking about just something else.
So I can answer that. I think that the something else has everything to do with what the part wants to communicate. It's part of the story. Parts aren't separate from the narrative. I feel like they both work together. Sometimes each part may have a story to tell that has something to do with either something recent or even something from the past, if there is a story to tell. So I find that it's both, and I don't think that the distraction is a different part. Sometimes it can be part of the narrative of what the part wants to communicate.
Mm.
And
I
there's a way
understand
to
that perfectly.
wheel it back to parts work.
Yeah, thank you.
One thing that I wanted to add to that, because that's actually a great question. As Black and Brown people, we're storytellers. You know, we don't come into therapy like, you know, I feel depressed and I can't sleep. Tell me the remedy so I sleep better. I'm going to tell you why I can't sleep and what's been happening in the past month and all of the things I've been doing to try to sleep. None of this is parts work, but it's part of the story. So I'm in telling you what I've tried, in telling you what hasn't worked, I'm sharing a narrative. And then as the therapist, the hope is, okay, with everything that I said, bring it back and make it make sense for me so that when I leave, I have actionable steps that I can work on that make sense for my body.
Thank you. And where are the demos and how do you sign up and all of that stuff?
That's a great question. We don't currently have a like a Google form or nothing for sign up. You can hit either myself or Dominique up if you want to be a part of the demos at the moment. And the demos are currently on the Seekr IG account, Seekr_bot, or Seekr at our Facebook page, and we also have them on YouTube as well for the full length features. So please, yeah, check them out. You get to see kind of what Nydia was talking about. These two, I think it was two. Was it one black person, one white person at one point with Nancy, and and so now we get to see two black folks, you know, sharing space together and relating to one another, which even makes me think about like the storytelling as being like a cultural part, like a part of Black. And so if we had to look at parts within Black culture kind of more broadly, it's almost just taking that seriously about the aspects that we come to these sessions with. So I hope I answered your question.
You did. Thank you. Are you able to drop that in the chat? The links and all of the places we can find you?
Yes, we will, and before we close, we'll get everybody's socials and everything up there too, so
Yeah.
that you'll know where to find the whole panel.
I'm gonna look for the link if you want to do the next question, Philip. So
All right, bet. So I think the next question comes to us from Lisa. Lisa, do you want to come up? Would you rather I read it? And either one is fine with me.
I can come off mute. I was just wondering more about the training experience that you all had, and if you can just share more about where you got trained, and are there trainings available specifically for working with people of color in this model?
Yeah, so I think all of us on the panel got trained through Black Therapists Rock. And so if you're a member of Black Therapists Rock, they do offer the training every year at a discounted price. And then they also offer scholarships for males that join. And as far as how the experience was, I feel like, I tell people all the time, like, I feel like I went through that whole training and it felt like a retreat for myself. Like all of the work that I did throughout those months that we were together. Philip was my PA, Requina was there. Yeah, it was profound. I can't even put it into words, honestly. It was I walked out of that experience feeling super confident in myself as a professional, felt like I had a community behind me. I felt like there was a lot of identity, questions about my identity that I hadn't really delved into that helped me get clarity around that. And like after I left that training, like my career took off significantly, just because of the healing that I was able to get from that. So that's what I'll share.
shout out to you, Vic, and your career taking off. Me and Vic were in the same training together. And I just want to echo what he said. BTR does offer discounted trainings for IFS. So if you're not already a member of Black Therapists Rock, please join. We have a Facebook group, but then we also have a membership. And so people who are members get the benefit of those discounts. And, you know, especially for Black males, we're trying to encourage Black males to be a part of trainings like this. So there are scholarships. So I'm gonna keep putting links in the group, but if you look for the Black Therapist Rock group on Facebook, also on Instagram, and Nydia put the handle there. And then of course you can go to the website to join and become a member.
Yeah.
Is that yes, you can become a member even if you're not licensed. So I'll just, what's our next question? Do we have another one?
Yes, we got a few, I think. So the next question comes from Debbie Chambers. Debbie, do you want to voice your opinion, or we can read it from here?
Oh, I don't mind if you read it, just because the sound might give a problem on my end.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and do that. Thank you for that, Debbie. So the question is, do you find it harder to work with as many clients today as you used to now that you use IFS as a modality, right? So I'm finding really seeing people in their complexity and feel tired than usual, right? Do others feel this?
I'll jump in there. I used to have my private practice as my full-time professional role. And there is an energetic emotional pull on my own system as I do the work too. And so, yes, for me, and now, so I've transitioned my career in different ways, but now I have a very, very small practice. Not only that, I think it's what kind of work, as you implement the IFS work, what kind of work do you want to offer to people? To me is the question that I ask myself. You know, I used to be able to see 10 clients in a day, back to back to back to back. You know, as I've implemented IFS and continue to do my own healing, that doesn't work for my system. You know, so I have to really, again, I'll go back to my own system, checking in what works for me, and based off of what works for my system, how does that also impact what I have to offer, right? I want to be present and available when I'm implementing this model, because it's a different level of healing. So yes, my client load did cut down, but also I think I was able to kind of look at the process. So it's not just having clients, right, and just implementing a modality. It's actually implementing healing. And what does that mean, right? Like, is it a deeper level? Is it life's work versus just doing therapy with clients? Does it shift depending on how you shift? You know, Victor just spoke to how when he did the healing, it opened up something for him. It's based on individual preferences, you know, circumstances. But yes, for me, that's what did happen. Nydia.
Oops. Co-sign on everything you said. I know that for me, similar to what you just mentioned, Requina, once I got into the model and I'm learning it from my own self and implementing it at work, yes, I was already tired, and this just added more tired to my body. And so much so that I just had to do something different, because I don't think it's realistic to be working so much anyway. And I feel like IFS taught me how to redirect my energy to focus on not only giving voice to the uncomfortable emotions, but how do I make room for more ease? How do I make room for the comfortable emotions? And that's rest. I can't work 24/7. I will not work 24/7. I need to rest. What does that look like so that I can continue to do this work? Because one thing that I do know to be true is that if I don't take a break, if I don't take a scheduled break, my body will take one for me at the most inconvenient time. And we don't want that. So honoring that, you know, honoring that feeling of being tired and doing something about it so that you can continue to be present, because this is also information. This is how our own body and our own system is communicating to us. This is not realistic, and it's not going to work long term.
I hope y'all catching these gems. I'm glad we recording this.
Yeah.
I'm glad we recording this.
Nah, for real, it's definitely gonna go up on our YouTube, and please be on the lookout for more. Do we have any other questions coming up? Gerard, thank you so much for putting the IFS Institute trainings in the chat. For those that don't know, you have level 1 trainings, level 2, and then you go to level 3, and so you kind of can work your way through it. And there's different ways to to, I guess, to different tracks to choose, whether you want to go like a more kind of neuroscience route or work on families and couples and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of different approaches to it. We got a few more minutes. Dominic, do you want to throw out one more question for us and maybe wrap, or is there anything else we want to kind of touch on?
I will go after Latasha.
Okay.
Yes.
Question.
This has really been great. Are you all purists, or do you all integrate other modalities, or you're just straight IFS? And if so, how do you decide when to integrate?
I'm not a purist, I cheat. I'm trained in EFT, I'm trained, CBT. I have different trainings in my background. I think for me, IFS is my primary. And so when do I choose to integrate? It depends on the work and it depends on the client. I have couples that I work with, right? I use the EFT model, but I'm integrating the IFS in there too, So IFS is a staple that I always tend to implement in my work in some capacity, and it usually works really well. Versus the other models, I don't integrate them in all the work that I do.
I'm about to say I'm a purist. I used to have other models that I use every so often. I mean, and I guess to an extent I do, but IFS leads. I find that I lean into other modalities depending on the time that I have with the client. So my full-time work is with Field Trip Health, which is a clinic that offers ketamine-assisted psychotherapy. And that by nature can technically be short-term, but the work is so rich that even if it is just one session, you can implement IFS as a way to introduce the model, but also teach, because with ketamine-assisted psychotherapy, the pace of the session just moves so quickly and it's so different than talk therapy. So in that sense, yes, I also work with employee assistance programs. And in that case, I wouldn't always implement IFS, because if a client has, let's say, 3 approved EAP sessions, I'm not going to open up a wound and then kind of just like, okay, well, you only have 3 sessions, bye. So I think that it kind of just depends on the framework in which I'm working with the client to allow time to really process. So IFS leads for the most part, for sure, for me.
Vic, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I'm a cheater.
Okay.
Yeah. I just follow, I just follow my intuition and whatever I feel like is needed in the moment. But I feel like you can do IFS and then use other modalities with like a part, right? In the moment, if it comes up, if it's needed, if it's necessary. So I'm still learning the model, admittedly. So I think I try to I still lean on what I know, right? To be able to get me through. But yeah, maybe I'll get to be a purist one day.
I was gonna say, can we use another word? I don't like cheat.
Sorry.
You're eclectic. There you go. Eclectic.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
Exploring. Y'all not cheating, y'all good.
Right.
That was funny, yo.
Any of you all offer consultation?
I do not at this time.
Oh man.
I will be in the future. Not right
Okay.
now. We're going through training season right now. But maybe in the future, yes.
Okay.
And
Oh, my bad, Philip. Go ahead. I was just gonna shout out, I know Tasha's in the audience. Gerard is in the audience, so I believe they offer consultation as well, and they were exceptional in our training as PAs. So you could always reach out to them as well if you're looking for immediate support.
Yeah. Tasha just announced her training. So if you want to send her a message, she can probably send you some info. And then I also just wanted to mention, in general, in our BTR group, that's where a lot of people will post if they're doing anything really. So, okay, so Tasha just put her email in the chat. Do we have any other questions? Because I wanted to make sure we got all the questions, and then I was thinking it might be helpful to answer some of the housekeeping questions.
Can I just jump in there real quick? Dominique and Philip, Kalima, thank you for answering the questions in the chat in regards to the training. So it isn't based on lottery or if you're a member. The way that it works, I think Vic spoke to this briefly. If you are a member, when we decide what the dates are going to be, Doreen will post them into the BTR Facebook group, and then you can apply that way based off of the information that's presented in the Facebook group. So it's more like a lookout. We usually do trainings with the collaboration of BTR and IFS yearly. So the date should be coming out probably maybe like by the late fall, early winter. There will be some dates posted maybe for next year.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that, Requina. That's kind of where I was going with it. Oh, Nydia's last name is Guity, Guity. So y'all can find her. As far as the videos, I put some links for Seekr. I just wanted to mention too that we're doing the videos as seasons. So this season is about anxiety. So if anyone is interested in doing a demo, that's what our topic is for this season. And then we have some other themes that we're going to do in future seasons. And then I also wanted to mention in terms of our panel discussions, first of all, thank you all for joining us. We are planning more panel discussions. And so we, would love if anyone wants to join a panel, let us know. Some of the topics that we've discussed as we continue to explore IFS and Black, our religion in IFS, the 8 C's, if you're familiar with that, and how our concept of self may be different than the way that it's defined in the model. Or, I'll just say different. So we're open to, like if there are topics or things that you think would be good discussions to have around IFS, specifically in the Black community. And then if you also want to participate. And of course, we want you all to come back and be in the audience again too. Anything you want to add, Philip?
Yeah, I was actually about to put this in the chat about the email. You can shoot me an email if you want to do a demo, but I definitely, before we close, I just want to give everybody opportunity to maybe, if you haven't already, drop in the chat or tell us a little bit of like what you're working on right now and or where everybody can find you or reach you. Let's, Nydia, do you mind starting us off?
Oh, all right. So I'm not working. Well, I am working. I'm working on a lot of stuff. So I work for Field Trip Health. You all can find me at missguity.com or on Instagram, MSGUITY. It's like guilty, but no L on Instagram.
Thank you. And Requina?
So right now I'm in the process of doing a lot of IFS trainings with BTR and with the Institute that aren't focused on BIPOC, but that are being offered level 2s and other level 1s with trainers. So that's what I'm working on primarily, but I'm also interested down the road, maybe doing some consultation and some group work with Black and Brown bodies around IFS and attachment. So that's something that I'm in the works. It's kind of like on the paper, but I haven't fleshed it out fully. And then I'm also gonna go into a season probably in 2023 of doing some writing. So that's what I'm cooking in the kitchen. And my Instagram, I'm not a social media person at all, but I have an Instagram and the handle is, I'll put it in the chat, but it's strength, the word strength, Inc., and the number 4. But again, I'm not a big social media person, so you won't see many posts on me. I hope to change that as I go forward. But that's it for me.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Requina. Vic?
So what are we sharing, Philip? Kind of what we're up to? My bad.
Nah, you good, bro. What are you up to right now? And I know you just dropped your info in the chat, like, but where people can find you, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So like I mentioned earlier, I'm deep into the psychedelic medicine space. I'm a director of policy and regulatory affairs for a training company, Fluence. I'm also working on a film that explores the reemergence of psychedelic medicine from the perspective of people of color. And you can watch that and picturecolorfulworld.com. You can watch the trailer and donate to the film at that website. And yeah, I'm just taking it slow, man. I'm just like taking it day by day. My thing is psychedelic medicine is a big part of what I do, trying to make sure that we have access, and both as therapists and as clients, to clinical trials, to the impending or the inevitable approval of MDMA and psilocybin, etc. So you can find me on social media. Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn are usually the ones that I'm most active on. And if you have any questions or if there's anything I can support you with, please do reach out.
100%. Thanks, Vic. And Gerard, thanks for your question, bro. I think we're gonna drop this maybe Friday at the latest. And then it'll be, it's a good question. I'm not sure exactly where it just said, but I know for sure it'll be on our YouTube channel. But I'm gonna let everybody know where it is.
We'll post in the BTR group too.
Yes, that too. Dominique, what are you working on right now? Anything you want to share with the folks?
So I have 2 lives that I lead. On one side, my IFS side, I'm an IFS fellow, which I'm really excited about. And in a couple weeks, I will be starting level 2, which I'm also really excited about. And I teach healthy relationships. So that's how I'm incorporating IFS into my work. And then in my other life, I'm a real estate broker. So it's totally different. But if anybody you know is interested in real estate, whether it's purchasing, selling, renting, or becoming a real estate agent, reach out to me. Let me do my shameless plug real quick. I don't know if this is true, but I like to believe that I'm the first Black woman to be in multiple regions in the country in terms of real estate. The goal is to be international. So hit me up.
Yeah, she's doing her thing, y'all. She really is. And so thank you for sharing that. So with that, I'll just start wrapping it up. Again, I'm Philip Butler, founder of the Seekr Project. You can check us out at theseekrproject.com. On there, you'll be able to learn more about what we're doing with Seekr. Seekr is a Black conversational AI. We trained Seekr primarily on IFS. So you got IFS, you got CBT, and you got narrative psychology, but the primary modality that the robot works on is with IFS. The whole point is to be like a stopgap, right? For therapists who may need a quick breather, for folks who are not ready even to get into therapy, and for folks who already have a clinician, right? Who you want to reach out to at 2 a.m, you know, if you just need to debrief and kind of unpack. And so this is where we see Seekr kind of being in, kind of fitting into the world. And then lastly, you know, we're doing these things. We hope to have just a regular, you know, kind of set of panels. We'll have more wonderful people. And then lastly, you know, we're doing these demos, man. We really want to make IFS and Black mental health and wholeness normal. You know, like this has got to be a regular thing. And so this is part of our mission. This is part of our goal. That's what we want to do. Just thank you again to everybody who's on this panel, who's taking time out their day to just pour into us. We're so grateful for everything that y'all said. I'm gonna have to rewatch it and you know, just kind of take it all in. And thank you to everybody who showed up, y'all. Your energy and your enthusiasm and your questions, all of this, man, it just helps to make this even better. So super grateful for y'all. Y'all are amazing too. And until next time, y'all, we'll see you on the other side.
Yes, thank y'all. Thank you, Nydia, Requina, and Victor.
Thank you. See you later, Clint. Yeah. Right, I'm gonna start recording.